when we think about costs, I think of it in terms of you're going to pay now or pay later kind of thing.
Right.
Because healthcare is not cheap.
No.
And so, you're either going to spend that money on feeding your body well, or you're going to be spending it on medications and hospital stays and doctor's visits. But you'll be much happier if you were spending that money on eating well. You'll feel much better too.
Welcome to this week's episode of the Rutledge Perspective Podcast. And I am so excited to have my guest and my SAR that we found out through a program that we were in as my guest this week on the podcast. This is Dr. Shayla Toombs-Withers, and she is a board certified doctor in family medicine and obesity medicine. And she has a plant-based nutrition diet. She really focuses on having our food be our medicine. And so we're going to dive into some of that, how she got into what she's doing now, and all the other stuff that you expect from the Rutledge Perspective. Dr. Shayla, Sarah Shayla, welcome to the Rutledge Perspective.
Thank you so much, Sora Laurel. I'm excited to be here and joining you.
This is going to be great. And so we talk a lot about on the Rutledge Perspective about being open, and Dr. Shayla and I actually met in a business accelerator that we were both in. And so we both happened to see kind of the pink and green in the background. And so she's like, wait, are you Ann? I'm like, yeah, are you A? So, sisterhood. And so I started listening to what she was saying, and I thought, I've got to bring this to my folks for a number of reasons. You guys know how I feel about education, how I feel about leadership, and Dr. Shayla has all of that in there. And so where I'd like to start is you are a physician and have really focused on plant-based medicine. But I want to go back to kind of how you started. When did you decide to go into medicine, and how did you really stick with it?
Yeah. So I will start, I'll say I always loved science. I was always, that kid that was in the science fair through school, through middle school, through high school. And so I knew I wanted to do science in some capacity, but I wasn't so sure of what that was going to look like exactly. For a while there, I thought I actually wanted to go more into biomedical engineering and more on to that side of things. And I actually did a summer program. I did one at Xavier when I was in high school. I did an engineering program. And what that really taught me was that I didn't so much like engineering.
The power of those summer programs.
Right, exactly. Nothing against Xavier, but I found I didn't like drawing and, all the dimensions and that side of it. And so I said, okay, well, I still like science, so we're going to still, go this road. And so then I went to undergrad. I went to Tennessee State, historically Black college, and it was great. Just that nurturing environment, from an HBCU. My professors, they wanted us to succeed, in whatever you wanted to do, and they were there to help. My dean, even over the biology department there, he was just so helpful in putting experiences before us. And so I did another summer program while in college, and this time it was at Brown University. And it was in lab-based STEM science. And so we were working on a project in terms of looking at sepsis and how it works. And it was a mice study that we were doing with mice. And so we had to do these surgeries. Now, this was another strikeout for me because I don't do mice, especially not live ones that are running around. So I loved what I was learning and being able to do these microsurgeries and these things, but I could not overcome seeing cages and cages of mice everywhere running around, and you having to pick these mice up and do all of this stuff. And so I said, yep, nope, research-based science, that's not for me. I guess medicine it is. Human medicine, let me correct it.
Yes.
Right. And so, that, really just those experiences helped to narrow it down for me from there. And really I just, proceeded. I looked at different types of medicine in terms of thinking, what I may want to specialize in, and then even different medical schools. I became drawn to the osteopathic philosophy just because it had a more holistic basis from even the way the osteopathic profession was founded, based out of traditional medicine, but with a more holistic perspective. And so that was something that I really liked. And so, I went on to attend medical school through there.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And I want to talk about that a little bit later too, the whole MD versus DO, all of that kind of stuff, right? It's kind of like EDD versus PhD. And there's been so much change around that. And so maybe we can hit on that towards the end. And if not, we'll hit that when we do a live show together. We can hit on that topic. But one of the things you mentioned in this conversation that I think is so important, especially for students, you took advantage of opportunities in summers and internships and programs to actually test out what you thought you wanted to do. That is such an important opportunity for people. And I think we don't, especially our kids, Black and brown kids, don't always take advantage of some of those programs. What was it that you think really drove you to say, you know what? Let me invest this time in the summer instead of just hanging out. Let me invest this time in the summer to actually see if this is what I want to do. And oh, by the way, make some contacts, figure out if I like the school, all that kind of stuff. What was it that made you see the value in that?
Yeah, honestly, I would say it was twofold. One was my parents. They have always, let us know that having a college education was important, and achieving, what you set out to be your goal. Those things are important, and just taking proper steps to get there. And then honestly, the other part to that were the school environments that I went to. I was blessed to have gone to a predominantly African-American high school where, once again, the staff was really invested in seeing us succeed. And so, my counselor in high school, even, they really made an effort for us to know that these opportunities were out there and to encourage us to, apply to these things. And the same thing with attending an HBCU in college, excuse me, just, really having these mentors, to really prepare us and just give us these opportunities. And then it was up to you, to make it happen and apply and do it. And I've always been, kind of a self-motivator too, when it comes to those things, and a reader and a learner. I always have a thirst for knowledge. Even now, I have to tell myself, no, you do not need another certification in this or that,
right?
Kind of thing. Yeah. But
it's hard. When you are a lifelong learner, it's like there's always something else to learn. There's always something else to do, right? And sometimes you do have to tell yourself, not today. Just wait. Do you really need to take one more test? Do you really need to get one more certificate? Really? Just no, right? Well, I think we've heard so much about STEM and STEAM and especially not only in the area of medicine, but just in general. We're finding so many organizations are looking for folks that not only have a STEM or STEAM background, and I'm glad they started adding STEAM, so that incorporated the arts, because that's a really important piece of it, but understanding that there's a way of thinking when you're in the sciences, right? That whole critical thinking piece that, quite frankly, is just sorely missing. And so when I talk to leaders in organizations, and having been in HR and dealt with kind of the medical piece of our companies, right? That whole idea around critical thinking, how wellness is such a key piece of productivity and efficiency and effectiveness, right? Engagement, all of those things kind of wrap around this wellness piece. And we're seeing so many organizations now will look to their engineers or their folks with this critical thinking, scientific thinking to do things like their marketing team, right? Or their sales or their HR, somebody who can actually think critically through situations. When you think back around your training in this area of STEM and where you are now, what are some of the critical pieces around having the science background, or even for people who may take one or two science classes, right? What are some of the key things that you take away from that has really enabled you to think differently, not only about your own practice, but just in general about how you make decisions and how you interact with people?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So there are a couple of things there, and one of the things I really like that you pointed out is that they have added the arts into STEM, making it STEAM, because that part is so important, especially as we talk about critical thinking. Another part of my background is that I'm also a musician. I also played several instruments, all through middle school, high school, elementary. And what we know, what studies have shown us now, even that exposing children to things like classical music and different types of music as young as in utero. has made a key difference in brain development, in their ability to
Yes.
be able to concentrate and focus and think. So adding that art piece to it has been very important. And then to further answer your question in terms of critical thinking, a lot of it even goes back to kind of the old school scientific method. In medicine, a
Yes.
lot of times, just seeing a patient, the first thing you're thinking, you're evaluating that person even before they
Right.
ever even talk to you, before you ever even really know all of what their symptoms are and what they're telling you.
Right.
You've already done half of your physical just looking at them.
Mhm.
you know and so a lot of that is part of the scientific method. So your hypotheses about what you think may be going on, and then
Mhm.
your actually methods and things that you're doing to actually further evaluate that person or what they
Right.
may have going on. Then those other key factors that are around them, who's in the hospital room with them, who's that kind of thing.
Mhm.
That they have a big soda on their desk, and are they there seeing you for diabetes? So you're looking
Yes.
at a lot of different factors that are going into that. um, and so really just, being able to use your mind and thinking beyond just what may be just, the obvious right in front of you, and
Yes.
just, pulling in all of those other factors into how that you look at things, into how you
Yeah.
evaluate your patient, as well as into, other decisions that you may make for your business, or, for your
Mhm.
work environment. It can translate over to those things
Mhm.
too.
I love that because, and I grew up playing too. My dad was a musician. And so I grew up playing the flute. And so all
Ah,
that classical music and all that. And it does. I mean, you have to
mhm.
learn how to count, right? You have to learn how to do
Yep, you
fractions
do.
when you play
You
music. I
do.
mean, there's
Yeah.
there's a lot of
Yeah, there's
math in
so
music.
much that you learn. Right. It is.
Yes.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yes. And then if
Yeah.
you're in marching band, that memorization, I mean, it's just
Yep.
really great brain activity.
Yeah.
But one of the things you said that I want to tap into is you said, you got these patients coming in, you're listening to them, you're watching them, you're observing them and understanding before they even, get into the meat of the exam. And what's key about what you said that I think people often miss is there's a piece of critical thinking that is clarity in observation. It's a
Yes.
way to listen holistically. Like I tell people, listening actively is with your ears and your eyes, right? And
Yes,
so
that
that
is so
whole
true.
critical thinking and observation is bigger than just, what is the person wearing and how do they sit and all that kind of stuff. You are observing holistically this
Right.
entire patient experience when you interact with them. And that kind of STEM, that critical thinking piece enables you to take in data from a
Hmm.
multitude of different points, right? To get kind of a
Right.
perspective on things. And so,
Right.
as you took that and started thinking about what you wanted to do and got into, as you said, kind of the osteopathic side, because it's so much more holistic than traditional medicine. And then you really moved into this plant-based nutrition.
Mhm.
What drove you into that arena?
Yeah. So really it was healing myself is really
Mm,
what, led me towards plant-based nutrition. I had found that I started suffering from abdominal pain.
mm,
And it just, became more severe, and it kind of seemed like no
mhm.
matter what I ate, although at the time I didn't realize it was what I was eating.
Yeah.
And so, I went and saw my own doctor, you name it, I had it done. It's part of the workup. And everything was
Hmm.
normal, thankfully. They really
Yeah.
found nothing. And so the doctor he said, well, let's just try elimination diet, and let's just see if we,
Hmm.
start kind of one by one with eliminating certain things. And so we eliminated dairy first. As we
Hmm.
know, lactose intolerance is
Yes.
very common, especially amongst African Americans.
Hmm.
And then, with my further learning, it actually affects a number of populations. And so I'm even more amazed
Yes.
now that why, milk is readily available in our schools and all. But we probably would need
Yes.
a whole nother podcast episode
Right.
for me to go down that road.
Right.
but yeah, so me just even eliminating that for just 2 weeks is what he had me do
Hmm.
initially, and I noticed just a dramatic improvement in the way that I
Mm.
felt. I didn't have this pain. And then it just became a thing. It would kind of, there were days I would go back and it's kind of a choose your
Hmm.
adventure day, like, well, do you got to feel this way if you eat that
Right.
thing, or versus not. And just the more that I did it, the more that I put more plants on my plate, I felt so much
Hmm.
better. I was able to do so
Yeah.
much more. I had never really been an athlete, but being plant based, I had gone on to run marathons and do
Hmm.
triathlon. and just seeing what difference it made in my own life and in my own health.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to give that to patients too,
Mm-hmm.
because I just know, that it could make such a difference in their lives too. And it has, for those
Mm-hmm.
people who, have incorporated those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember when I left, you and I had talked, when I left corporate, I needed to get out. I had gained about 60 pounds. I wasn't sleeping. I hadn't slept on a Sunday for 5 years. And while I was still, my trainer's just amazing. We were even doing, remote sessions with my iPad, right? But it's all about also nutrition and mobility for me. It's that combination, because my body is extremely tight. And so I have to be really focused on mobility, or it's going to be a problem, as I age. I have to continue to work on my mobility and focus on that. But one of the things I found, especially my, the gift that keeps on giving, that I allowed myself to move into type 2, knowing that, that is something that runs in my family, right? There are a lot of people that wind up, and it's prevalent in the African-American community. If you look at the way we eat, right? It's not surprising. But also stress contributes to that. Lack of sleep contributes to that, all of those things that we're finding. But what I like about what you said, and what I ultimately had to do, was make a decision to say, I don't feel good.
Right.
I don't feel good. And I'm not okay with not feeling good. And I have a choice about making a change. And so when you talk about having gone to your doctors, and we know everything that's going on in the healthcare system, especially with people of color, we're not always taken seriously, right? Our pain is not considered to be real pain, all the things, which again is a whole different podcast, right?
Yep.
But you can run all the tests, and all the tests can say everything's okay. But if you still know something's not right, keep talking. So whether or not it's your health, whether or not it's your organization, whether or not you're a leader or an individual contributor in your organization, keep saying something if something's just not right. And how did you find that strength? And then how do you help your patients find that strength to say, I know what the tests say, but something's not right? How do you help people get there?
Yeah, that's so important. And really the important part is you. One of the, I've used it for even the slogan of my business now, is that the essence of health is in you. And, or I came up with that because it really is, I can tell you 100 different things to go do, but unless you feel motivated, unless you feel the drive to do that, unless you want to do that, and unless you find a reason, to do that, you're not going to go do it, and you're not going to, get those results unless you are ready for that. And so it really is. And when it comes to, making decisions, whether it be for your health or for your business or, what have you, you have to have those same factors. You have to be motivated. You have to have a goal as to why you want to do that. You have to find your why, and you have to want to do it. To be able to go forth and make those changes.
Yeah. And have a voice. Don't be afraid to say, no, this just isn't right. I know, as my grandmother got older, my mother's a surgical nurse, retired surgical nurse, and we'll go to doctor's appointments and stuff with her sometimes too. And she asks lots of questions now, but there are certain times I'm like, Mama, you are a nurse. Why didn't you ask that question right now? She's also 81. She's tired at this point. She's like, I'm just tired. Right.
Yeah.
But we have a tendency to push onto people. And I'd love to have your input on this. We have a tendency to push onto experts, whether that's our doctors, our trainers, our teachers, right? Our professors, our best friends. We have a tendency to push onto these experts a responsibility and not even a trust, but a responsibility that if we say something one or two times and they tell us something, well, they're the expert, they must know. But no one knows you better than you.
Right.
So how do you stand in your expertise as a physician? You've got the training, you've got the knowledge, you know what you're doing. This is not just fly by night medicine here. Right. You specifically worked to get where you are. How do you help people balance? Look, I know what I know. And there's a lot of art in medicine. And I need
there is.
Right?
Exactly.
How do you get people to participate in their own health or their own decision making?
Yeah. So I look at that a number of ways. And so, there are those times where you have individuals and you've done everything, you've done every study, and everything. And
Right.
there is nothing, I say nothing in quotes,
Yeah.
that, scientifically or medically,
Yeah.
that I can diagnose you with and say that, oh, this is it, kind of
Yep.
thing. But the other part to that is that there are so many different factors that play a part into our health, beyond just of what we think. So when a person,
Yeah.
still comes to me and say, oh, I still don't feel good. I'm still fatigued,
Yeah.
every day. I still may be having stomach pain or these issues. Then we need to look beyond the obvious. And a lot of
Yeah.
times it's, especially in our country, it's stress related.
Yes.
It can be mental health related, depression and
Mm-hmm.
anxiety. Anxiety particularly can actually have physical symptoms for people.
Yes.
And, we may not find anything wrong on a test, but that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean it's not there. But it's
Right.
getting to the root of that. And so, beyond just having people a lot of times change what they put on their plate, or, me giving
Mm-hmm.
them a prescription for something, a lot of the things that I also like to look into is how well do they sleep? How much stress are
Mm-hmm.
they under? Are they working day and night?
Yeah.
Are they, trying to take care of mom and kids and everybody else, and not having time for
Mm-hmm.
themselves? And then we institute some other things. So we institute some coping strategies. We
Mm-hmm.
institute some meditation. I find a lot with my folks who are professionals that for a
Mm-hmm.
lot of us, we just don't take the time to slow down a little bit. So
Right.
even just, adding a 5 or 10 minute meditation, whether it be on your lunch break or right after a
Mm-hmm.
meeting, or, taking a few minutes just sitting in your car, can make a world of
Yeah.
difference, even in how you feel physically,
Yep.
because there's an interconnectedness between our brain and our mind as well as our body.
Yes.
And so just, realizing that and knowing that that part is important too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I can't stress it enough. I mean, people who've been following me for a while, those of you who've been listening to the podcast for a while, know I'm a huge believer in therapy. I've had my therapist for years, over a decade. And it is so important to have your village, right? Those people you can go
Right.
to that you can rely on, but do not shy away from a professional therapist or psychotherapist or whatever you need to take care of you. And especially those in Black and Brown communities, we need to
Yeah.
stop having so much shame around seeking help for mental health, for anxiety, for
Mm-hmm.
depression, for stress. Look at what just happened to Twitch, right? And I know that's going to
Right.
date the podcast, but that's just a
Yeah.
real thing. No
Right.
one saw that coming, or at least no one saw it enough to be able to say something, right?
Right.
And so I'm going to take this moment in the middle of this podcast to say, if you are in crisis or if you are in need of help, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline now has an emergency number that is easy. It's 988. If you see someone, if you know someone, if you yourself are in crisis, 988, it will connect you immediately with someone to talk to. Their 800 number still works. And I believe it's 800-255-TALK. I believe, but 988 is the right emergency number to get you connected with someone immediately. Please do not suffer alone. Please do not suffer in silence. There are people here who want you here. You are valuable because you exist. You do not have to be perfect to be priceless. And so please, just as a public service announcement, if you really are really stressed, if you're under anxiety, if you're feeling depressed, if you just don't feel yourself, talk to someone. There are people there who can help you. And especially now with all the teletherapy and all that kind of stuff, do something, call somebody. And 988 is free.
Yeah.
It's free support. So please do that. So
Right.
Dr. Shayla, as we think about where we're going and what we're doing and how we're aging and what we want our lives to be like, right? And the things that we want to do and encouraging folks, especially those of us who have children or nieces and nephews and Black and Brown children and people of color who are thinking about STEM, and especially in medicine, we need more doctors who look like us, who understand, right, our journeys and the things that are critical to our relationships. One of the things you talked about was kind of this nutrition and the plant-based piece and really having gone plant-based. And we know for a fact that many of our communities are food deserts. And we also know for a fact that healthy food can be, I'm not going to say always is, but can be much more expensive than just running to McDonald's for their $5 menu and getting a full meal. What is it that you would encourage people to think about around that whole nutrition piece, especially thinking about a plant-based diet when they are trying to juggle time and efficiency and got to pack a lunch and the lettuce is going to go bad in 2 days, but I can just do this other thing that's not going to bad. How are you encouraging your patients and other people, in your community and the people you surround yourself with to really think differently about food and about how they spend on food?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And so a couple of things that you touched on that are very important. Yes, we definitely need more black and brown individuals in medicine. There have been studies that have come out, thankfully, now that show that black and brown doctors take better care of black and brown patients.
Yes.
And that bias, as much as we would like for it not to be there, it is. And so we definitely have a need. So I do, if anyone's listening and they've thought about even an inkling of going into medicine, do it. We definitely need you in this line of work. And then, in terms of African Americans and people of color and getting more plants on our plate, it's so important. One of the things that I like to highlight is the health disparities that we suffer from in our communities. We have the highest rates of heart disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, strokes, all of these things, cancer. And a large part of them are preventable from a standpoint of, what we consume and the matter of if we are moving our bodies or not. There's a component to it that we do know that chronic stress plays a part in it. And we have recognized even in the medical arena that people of color are under chronic stress due to, racism and disparities in this country. And so we do recognize that, but the things that we can do and the things that we do have control over are what we put into our bodies. And so, when we think about costs, I think of it in terms of you're going to pay now or pay later kind of thing.
Right.
Because healthcare is not cheap.
No.
And so, you're either going to spend that money on feeding your body well, or you're going to be spending it on medications and hospital stays and doctor's visits. But you'll be much happier if you were spending that money on eating well. You'll feel much better too. And so, if you kind of think of it that way, that should help some. And then the other part to it is that plant-based eating doesn't really have to be more expensive. It's what you choose to consume. But things that you can buy in bulk, rice, brown rice, particularly oatmeal, dried beans, those things are relatively cheap. You can typically go and get them for $1 or less in a lot of places. And it's going to be much cheaper than, a steak or a hamburger even.
Right.
And then, in terms of time, one of the things that I think we forget about time is, I talked to a professional not that long ago who's a client of mine, and we talked about why they always go through the drive-through. And so they said, well, pick up the kids. And so we go through the drive-through and then I can just have the food and we go home. But then we rethought that. I said, what if you went home instead and made your salad? And you put, open a can of beans, even put a can of, beans on it. Maybe you bulk cook some rice, the day before, put some of that on it. So it's like, you probably could have that same, meal in about 5 minutes. You're going to spend longer in the drive-through line even than what it will take you to put that together when you get home.
Right.
And so, for a lot of us, it's even just rethinking because, we have gotten programmed, these marketers, they do a great job of saying, the $1 menu and you just drop it through, have it your way and all of those things. But you can have that at home and it doesn't have to be difficult or it doesn't have to be, taxing even, and it doesn't even have to be perfect. Just put some food on the plate that's going to nourish you. That's the key there.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's funny. I was watching a documentary this weekend on the automat, because I love everything old, right? All that stuff in the 1950s and 60s. And they were talking about the automat, and it was all a documentary about Hardin and Hardart, who started the first automat in Pennsylvania and then in New York. And one of their advertising pieces, as they started getting more and more competition, because it was like a nickel, right? For nickels, that you put those in the vending machines and you got your pie or you got your meatloaf or you got your beans or whatever it was. And they started talking about how the beauty of the automat was it took a lot of the work away from mom, right? It didn't have so much stuff that mom had to do. And I thought, so as you're talking about that, I'm like, yeah, that whole movement towards frozen food and packaged food and all of that was all about efficiency, but it also meant more preservatives, right? All of those kind of things that are in. And by the way, y'all, I'm sure when Dr. Shayla is talking about, look, more plants, put more plants in the plate, she's not talking about the greens with all the bacon that we all love.
Right.
And all the salt and all the grease. And I'm a good for some, roasted Brussels sprouts with a little bit of bacon. So, bacon's not horrible, but it's not the thing that you need to be clogging your arteries with every day, every meal, right?
Exactly.
So
and I'm from the South, so I get it. And I get that people feel the need, but we can season our food with things beyond bacon. Dry seasonings make great alternatives. I'm a garlic person. I put garlic on everything, and it tastes great.
So, garlic powder and onion powder.
Exactly. Yeah, it's the start to every recipe.
Yes, exactly. We just have to rethink some things and retrain our palates, I think. And honor the fact that we didn't get here overnight. There are some institutional and systemic things that got us here, right? There's a reason that we eat some of the things we eat because those were the only things that we were afforded the ability to eat, generations ago, right? 1619 and beyond. So there's a reason that our diets look the way they look. But that doesn't mean that when you know better, you don't do better, right? Because now we know better and we can do better. And that doesn't mean you don't have your Thanksgiving. We have all the stuff, right? That that your body's craving. But for the most part, 95, 98% of the time, if you don't make time for your wellness, you will be forced to make time for your illness. I love that quote that I keep seeing all over the place, right?
Yeah.
As we go into Christmas and I'm like, Mom, will you make your brownies? Oh, and the 1, 2, 3, 4 cake and the holiday, dessert. Oh yeah. And the striped cookies, right?
Yeah.
No food.
This time of year is definitely a challenge. Yeah.
Yes. So okay. And the tamales, because it's Christmas. You can't have Christmas in Texas without tamales, man. So, we got to have the tamales. As we start to end this, because what I love for you guys who are listening about talking with Dr. Shayla is no matter whether you are in medicine or you're dealing with a health issue or you're in a company, right? And you're leading people or you're just there yourself, this whole idea of one, critical thinking through STEM education, having those critical thinking skills is key to be able to understand how to get and disseminate and utilize data. That's one. The second thing that she talked about is really those choices that we make to use our voice and manage our own health and really think through what it is we need and thinking holistically when we don't feel good, what is it? And then making a choice to do something different because we all have a choice. So Dr. Shayla, as we kind of come to the end of this, if there are a couple of things that you would tell someone, first, I'm going to ask it from this perspective, who is thinking about medicine as a career or one of the sciences as a career, especially a kid of color, right? Or someone who has a child who is thinking about medicine and then they're getting ready to go into physics too. And it's like, do I really want to do this? What are a couple of things that you would tell them if they're really thinking, medicine or at least one of the sciences is what I really think I want to do?
Yeah. So the first thing I would have them do is reach out to find a mentor, and whether that be a Black doctor or a Black scientist. Even most of us are happy to to pay it forward and to help the next generation. So just don't hesitate to reach out, whether that be contact their office or find their email or something of that nature. The next thing would be to reach out to the HBCUs because a lot of them do have programs, and a lot of times, in HBCUs and as well as other universities, and a lot of times these programs don't even go field because a lot of people don't know about them, don't know that they exist or don't think about them, in the science field. So definitely look for them and reach out, and have your child be a part of it. They don't, even if they don't stick to it. Like I said, I did engineering and all these other things, but it was still a learning experience, just to try it. And then talk to the folks at their school, because these people should be getting information that, now whether or not they readily give it to your student is a different story, but at least challenge them and talk to them to do that. But definitely, look out and try to find a mentor. The National Medical Association, as well as the Student National Medical Association, they are both the national African American councils of doctors and pre-med individuals. The student one is for medical students, then the national one is doctors. Yeah. And they both have a mentorship component to them. And then they usually have resources too for like summer programs and things of that nature. So folks can also go on their websites and find information there.
Oh, I love that. And we'll include that in the show notes for folks too. So if you're listening and you are a student, definitely do that. If you're listening and you're the parent of a student, the same thing, encourage people to go. Because as you heard Dr. Shayla say earlier, she just did a couple of programs, right? In the summer, she just went and tested it out. And through testing it out, she was able to narrow down what it is she really wanted to do. I mean, I took physics in undergrad. I loved my first semester of physics. Then electricity and magnetism hit, and I'm like, I've got no interest in that whatsoever. And organic chemistry, when the quiz, the 50-point quiz has a mean of 5, no. Right?
I think that's organic chem at whatever university you go to.
Yeah. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. And I think I got a 4, and I was like, what? Right.
Right, exactly. When you celebrated that, yes, I can understand.
No. This is not where I need to be. But taking that opportunity, as she said, to really test those waters. People change the last thing I read was students change their major an average of 3 times. That means there are people who change their major more than that. So it's okay. It's better to know and to test and to try in safe spaces than not, right? Just test it out. If you hate it, you hate it. At least now you know. So then the last question, Dr. Shayla, is for those folks who are really thinking about kind of moving to this plant-based diet. Actually, I've got 2 questions. Who are moving to a plant-based diet? What is kind of the first thing they can do to start doing that?
Yep. They can start today. Just putting some plants on their plate. Like I said, a lot of times, people overcomplicate things, and I'm a simplicity kind of person. So the first thing I have patients do is just put the plants on your plate. What do you like to eat? If it's tacos you like to eat, that's an easy one. Let's just leave out the chicken or the pork or whatever. And let's just use the plants this time and see how you like it. Maybe try some beans as your filler only. Or even some plant-based crumbles if you're up for trying that. But you don't have to even make it that complicated. Just put the plants on your plate. Go with what you like first, and then build from there.
I love that. I love that. And for those of us, because I generally do a plant-based diet. I've moved away from it probably this last year has been kind of a resetting, because like I said, I lost about 60 pounds really fast, and my body needed this year to just kind of settle. So I'm actually getting back on the plan because I need to get back down some more. But what I found, at least for me, and again, this is the disclaimer, Dr. Shayla is not giving medical advice to folks who are not her patients, right? So I'm asking her this question as a general guideline. So please do not take anything that she gives you as specific medical advice for your medical condition. Hello. Okay. Everybody got that? All right. So for me, I love plant-based. I actually did some pescatarian because I did need to get more protein. With the level of workouts I was doing, it just wasn't enough protein. I also can't consume soy. So a lot of those things I can't do. So a lot of the tofu and all of that's soy based. For those who are looking to get in enough protein because they are increasing their workout, what are some of the things that you tell people who are on kind of plant-based diets, or if they want to do pescatarian, or if they just want to, do not red meat? How do you help them continue to get protein so they can still do effective workouts, shakes or whatever? Like whey protein is my jam.
That's a great question. Now, I will, the first challenge I will say is that most of us actually get enough protein. Now, it is for certain that if we're working out, we are burning muscle, and we're burning more of that off, and we do want to replenish that. So we probably do, want to finish our workout and have a shake or a smoothie even. But there are a couple of things that you can do. One thing I like is cannellini beans. And there's some people call them white beans or, navy beans, different things, but they essentially have no flavor to them. So you can really, they're whatever you make them. So you can put them in a smoothie, you can put them, on top of a salad, you can almost put them in anything and they'll take on the flavor of whatever you want it to be. But it's a great source of protein. It's a great source of fiber with that. And then another thing that people often forget about our high fiber foods also are high in protein. So things like still cut oats, things like our brown rice is going to have protein, things like barley, farro, quinoa is another good source. Those are all good sources. Yeah, they're good sources of protein as well as fiber. And the fiber helps our cholesterol. It helps to stabilize our blood sugar. And then, we get a source of protein there too. So there are definitely some good plant-based sources. And then other foods that we eat that a lot of the times we don't even realize has protein. So for instance, broccoli has protein in it. Spinach has protein in it. The majority of things will have some protein. Now, you definitely will have to eat more of it. But that's also the kind of the good thing about a plant-based diet is it's not one of those diets where we have to so much limit what we eat. A lot of times, people will try a certain diet and say, oh, I'm starving. I'm on a diet and I'm hungry. You don't have to be hungry on this kind of diet because, nobody's getting a heart attack from eating too many carrots kind of thing.
Right.
You can definitely, go for it and knock yourself out there in terms of how much you eat. And so, that's just a couple of ways. But then, for sure, tofu, tempeh, those will, be really good sources of protein too if you don't have a condition to where that, you can't have those items.
Right. Oh, I love that. Because and again, I'm not plugging these people. I've used them. And they've had some issues lately, but I've had, for the most part, really good luck. But if somebody's looking for something, Daily Harvest has some really great plant-based things that are frozen, and their shakes are fantastic. So that's what I use. And they're delivered to your house. They're frozen. They have dry ice around them, and you just stick either your coconut water or your almond milk or your cashew milk or whatever in there and have you a shake. And in fact, that's what I'm going to do for my afternoon snack when we're done is get my protein shake with whey protein, because I can't do the egg protein, that egg white protein.
There's some now, and then there are some with pea protein now too. Orgain makes one that I like too. It has pea protein in it. And so, that's another way. If you especially for professionals, a lot of times we're on the go and you do need something kind of quick that you can just grab. So that's a good source of one too.
Exactly. Yeah. Because that pea protein, I can do that every once in a while. I have to have it mixed with something else. It can have kind of a strong taste to it. But there's the bottom line, folks, is there are options. Yeah, there are options. And if you are a food volume person, I'm not. If you are a food volume person, you need to see a lot on your plate. Plant-based is going to be your jam because you can fill it up, man.
Yeah.
What you say? You're not going to get a heart attack from eating too many carrots. So
you definitely will not.
So give yourself an opportunity to get some plants in your diet. I've got some bok choy in my refrigerator right now that's getting ready to get roasted because I love me some bok choy and some Brussels sprouts and all those fibrous, cruciferous vegetables. They're really good crunch. So if you need texture, that's really good. Get you some avocado. Now, I don't slice avocado. I have to have mine mashed up. I know it's weird. I can't do slices because I feel like I'm eating Crisco. But if you mash it up, put some salsa in it, and give me guacamole all day long, right? I can do that. You just got to know yourself, right? It's all right. Just got to know yourself.
Texas.
Whatever works. So, well, I want you guys to really, if you hear nothing else from this, one, if you or someone is really interested in STEM and there is specifically a person of color, please encourage that. Encourage, support, find information. We need more of us in the STEM situations, right? We need us more in the sciences, and we especially need more of us as doctors and physicians. We need that. And second, you have an option about your health. Just get up and move. You don't have to join a gym. You don't have to get a trainer. Go out and walk. It doesn't take any money to put some shoes on and just go walk. Get moving and eat well. If you're in a place that has a food desert, start talking about it. Go to your community meetings about it. We have some food deserts here in Houston, and it's a huge city. We have some serious food deserts. And people started screaming about it. And now we've got some really great stores that have come into those places. We've got one of the very first Black-owned grocery store was up in North Houston. And there was another one that was open, I think, in Fifth Ward. So we've got some people moving and shaking to ensure that communities of color are getting access to really good food. And oh, by the way, they're supporting farmers and agricultural people of color in stocking their stores. So it's a community effort. So please go out and take care of you. It is important. We have a choice. Yes, there are institutional things that are a problem, but it's only a continual problem if we allow it to be. So let's step into our power and do something different and choose to do something different as much as we can. Do what you can with what you've got. I'm not saying go out and buy up the store and bok choy, but if you can go get a head of lettuce or just do rice. As Dr. Shayla said, do some beans. I've got 4 bags of beans and I keep beans in my house, right? 4 bags of beans, throw that stuff in a pot with some water. Mm-hmm. It's okay, right? You can do that. So Dr. Shayla, thank you. Thank you for being on the show. Thank you for letting us know that there are options. And thank you for your time. I'm so appreciative that you were here. And I'm so excited for people to get to know you. And we're going to have to do it again. We're going to do a live show for sure.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sora Laura. It was really fun to chat with you. Yeah, thank you.
This has been awesome. And so for those of you who are listening and watching, I will have all of Dr. Shayla's information in the show notes. So please do that and listen to those and check her out because she also does some nutritional coaching. She is in Tennessee. So if you're in Tennessee and you're listening and you're looking for a new physician, reach out to her. She also has her own podcast. So be sure and check out her podcast. I'll have a link to that also in the show notes. And as always, thank you for listening. I appreciate every listen, every download, every comment. If there's something you want to hear, that you want me to talk about, a topic, a person you want me to interview, send me a DM and I'm happy to try to make that happen. Have a great rest of your week. Thank you for tuning in and we'll catch you next time. Bye. You have been listening to the Rutledge Perspective Podcast. Thank you so much for downloading and for connecting. You can find previous episodes of the podcast on my website at laurelrutledge.com/podcast. You can also find me on social media at Laurel K. Rutledge and/or The Rutledge Perspective. And I'd love your perspective on the things we talk about. And if there's a specific topic you want me to cover, just let me know. And please share this podcast with someone in your village who may need this little piece of perspective today. And if you're so inclined, I would really appreciate a 5-star rating and review on the platform of your choice. Apple Podcasts and Spotify reviews are particularly helpful. Thank you again for listening. Take care.